Right on.
I'm like, is it too early for beer? I'm like, well, not in New York. It's 3 o'clock.
So true. True. No, I definitely drink significantly less now.
Yeah, I have been too. Like we, Melissa and I went to see the Psychedelic Furs a couple nights ago, and
Nice.
I was like, I was designated driver, but we went early enough that I could definitely could have drank. You know, we went in early, like to Huntington, and had dinner and drinks because it was at the Paramount.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm good. Like I want to enjoy it. I was like, you drink, I'll drive. You don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Be
Right on.
the good partner.
How were they?
Oh, they were amazing. I was
Yeah.
thinking to myself, I'm like, this dude's been singing Pretty in Pink for 41 years, and he still sounds awesome.
I went to go see them like, oh God, what was it? Like 2011? No, like 2013, I think,
Mhm.
at Irving Plaza. And I kid you not, it's probably the most fights I've ever seen at a show in my life.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
because
It was a
I'm
tame
not
crowd at the
saying like
Paramount.
more than like Madball, Slayer, like these bands. Like it was
Yeah.
crazy. Like how and I think I think the determination I made for it is that, when you go to see like extreme music, it's like everybody collectively is really happy to be there, like, and there's just like there's just a social contract in there that like this is going to
Yeah.
be an intense show and this is going to be the way that it is, and you have like real showgoers, like people
Right.
that go see live music all the time. Whereas I think, you know, Psychedelic Furs at like Irving Plaza is definitely a lot of like bridge and tunnel couples and,
Yes.
like union workers and cops and firemen that are like taking their wives to see Psychedelic Furs because they like the
Yeah.
Pretty Pink song, and they just don't know how to act at a show.
Oh,
And
it's so true.
it's like somebody shoves past them or something, and it's like just turns into an all-out brawl. But I could not believe it. Like it was like after a while, I was like, "Babe, we gotta." My ex and I were there. I'm like, "We gotta stand in the back. Like this is violent."
Yeah, because next thing you know, like you're in the middle of like two like angry middle-aged dudes that hate their lives throwing
Yeah,
punches, and you don't want to be a part of that.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it was a pretty tame crowd.
That's
And
they were
it was
great.
also at the Paramount, so it was Long Island. It
Yeah.
also happened to be St. Patrick's Day, so
Oh,
it's like, which I was like, I can't believe I'm going into Huntington Village on St. Patrick's Day. I was like, if I like Guido's throwing up like green beer because it's the
right.
one night they're like, yeah, cool Irish, and I'm like,
You're
nah.
right.
Normally I would stay home, drink red wine, and watch Netflix and be
Right.
none the wiser.
Exactly.
But COVID kept bumping the show. Um, so it just happened to be on St. Patrick's Day. And I was like, all right, so we're doing this. you know, I mean, COVID's bumped so many shows now. It's like this whole week, which is kind of cool because my birthday is next week. So I was
Nice.
like, I've got like all this stuff going on show wise, which is kind of a good problem to have since we were stuck for so long not being able to do it. Going to see Touche Amore at Irving Plaza Sunday, going to see Henry Rollins Thursday, guys like, on my Mount Rushmore of human beings I want to be like. Then I'm going to see Quicksand Saturday.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so it's just, I was like, all right, it is what it is. I won't sleep a lot this week, but I'm about to turn 44, and this is my fountain of youth. It's music, live music nonetheless. So let's roll with it.
Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you, my friend. So let me give a actual introduction here. Thanks for hanging out. This is the
Yeah,
Nobody Speaks podcast. I'm Antonio Longo. I'm here with Travis Bacon coming to me from LA. So what's up, buddy? How are you?
doing all right. How are you?
Pretty good, thank God. Like the weather's warming up here in New York. I'm loving it. I'm like, get me out of my heavy coat and my sweatshirts, please. I want to see the warm weather so I can hang out outside. And
Yeah.
it's just been it's been a strange winter here in New York. Things are just finally starting to open it up, so it feels a little more normal. But how's it been in LA as far as like things opening back up?
Things have been open for a while. Um, it's like anywhere else. It opens and then it closes and then it opens and it closes and everything. we took away the mask mandate recently, which I'm definitely enjoying, but kind of anticipating we're gonna go right back into that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
but you know, it's been nice. Like same here. I've been to a ton of shows in the last couple weeks, which has been awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, it feels good. Feels good to
Yeah. What was a good standout show that you went to that you're like, oh, finally?
mm. uh Immolation I saw the other day, which is really awesome. I haven't seen them in a while, and they're old friends of mine as well. I used to tour, do front of house for them for a while, and then you know, I never been like a huge fan of this band, but was really happy to just have like the live experience. When I went to see Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats the other night
Oh, that's cool.
at a place over here called Belasco Theater. Yeah, they're kind of one of those bands for me that I just wasn't really on the train when everyone was into them, but I think, well, not that people aren't still into them, but they definitely had like a really good push when they first.
Their big moment in
Yeah,
time.
exactly. But like anytime I heard it in passing, you know, I'm not like I'm just a little choosy when it comes to that genre.
Okay.
Stoner rock, stoner metal. But anytime I
Yeah.
heard it in passing, I'm like, okay, this band writes some real songs. So it was cool being reminded of that in live experience. So
And it's always so much different live too. There are those bands for me that maybe I don't gravitate towards like their records per se, but I know that they have something. And if they're playing live and it's a situation of people I want to see are going to be there, or there's another band playing, I kind of go in with that open mind. And there have been plenty of bands that I heard their records and I was like, yeah, this is cool. And then I went to see them live and I was like, oh, okay, you know. And to me, that's the big test. You know, when Circa Survive first came out with Anthony Green coming back after doing Seosin for a really short time, you know, like they just had that one EP with him. Um, my ex-wife at the time loved them and I was like, cool, we'll go see them play. I was like, whatever, it's, you know, it's totally fine, I'm not going to hate it, you know, I'll go hang out. And then he kind of came out on stage and it was at the Knitting Factory before it moved to Brooklyn, so it was that
ah,
like
yeah,
smaller room.
that
It
small
was,
tiny corner stage. I remember.
yeah, I loved that place.
So
And you know, we kind of moseyed in from the bar. um he comes out, the band's putting on their guitars, the lights are low, and he just moves his hands out like this and goes like that. And the whole crowd moves naturally. They start playing, and the dude puts the microphone to his chest and starts singing, and I can hear him over everything. And I was like, oh, now I get it. You know, I was like, cool. And it was like a really great show, super fun experience. And it even made going back and listening to their records better. And, you know, then you know, I got more into it, but it was really the live performance that did it for me. It was the night, the atmosphere, you know, because I know, you know, I've been in a million recording studios in my day. Um, and you know, some big ones, some in corners, some in holes, some in basements. And I know you can make a good record, you know, but can you put your money where your mouth is? And you know, he was one of those guys that did it. And I was like, all right, cool.
nice.
Respect.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a good performer. I did I'm not a huge fan of the band or anything, but he came over to a venue I was working at out here called Moroccan Lounge. And I did front of house for him, and he was just great. Like I just really liked him anyway. Just such a
Yeah,
sweet,
yeah.
just
Yeah,
sweet.
I've met him like once or twice. He's good friends with some of my good friends, and you know, no one's ever had a bad thing to say about him. He's just one of those guys that's just kind of, you know, doesn't let ego go to his head, even when they're as big as they are. And I was like, cool, you know, like good dude.
Yeah.
You know, so we first met actually at a show when New York started to open up again, which
Yes.
was Nitzareb, which was my first time seeing them.
Ah,
And unfortunately, I mean, I didn't get to see the full them, but it's still a great show. Um, you know, Melissa took me out to that one. I was pretty excited for it because, again, it was the first time. I always love kind of seeing a band I haven't seen before, now after COVID, I kind of appreciate that a little bit more. And it's like
Yeah.
I try not to say no to some things because
Yeah.
one of my biggest regrets in life is turning down Tom Petty tickets to Nassau Coliseum literally like months before he died. And I'm like, fuck, you know, it's just one of those things. And I'm like, God damn it, like,
Yeah.
just as a songwriter, he's written the way that man wrote songs for me was just, uh, the catchiness to it, the sometimes simplicity. I always respected, and I was like, really wanted to see him, but it was just a lot going on, and boom, like that, it was gone. So, anytime I get a chance to something like that, I'm like, all right, cool, let's go.
Yeah.
um, you know, and for me too, as I have opened my mind to like more and more music, growing up a hardcore kid in New York, it's like we were kind of sandwiched into this thing. And growing up, my mom was listening to the Beatles, Joan Baez, like stuff like that, Bob Dylan. But then when I found music my own, it was more metal and hardcore.
Mhm.
And then as I got older, I've opened my mind to my favorite band is The Cure. So even that was different than what I was listening to hardcore wise. So when Melissa and I first met each other, we spent an entire like 7 hours at a bar talking about David Bowie and Nine Inch Nails and Depeche Mode. Um, and since then we've been giving each other over the last almost 3 years like music back and forth. So that was one of those nights that was like, this is her giving me one of her favorites, and I was like, oh, it was great. Those kinds of bonds are things that really make things grow. So it was a super awesome night. They were fantastic, even down a major member. And you know you being in LA, well, in California now, you're home for a little while, so I'm glad we got to have that connection, and you agreed to hang out and do this podcast with me, talk a little music.
Sure.
As you've kind of announced on social media that you've really been putting out there your music now that you've been scoring.
Mhm.
So as someone who's been a touring musician in many bands, and it's funny because I didn't realize I have seen you play before in Black Anvil at
Oh,
St. Vitus. um, and then I've seen Black Anvil after you, and with my friend Gary Bennett from
that
Kill
was
Your Idols.
actually before me.
Gary was before you, that's right.
Yeah.
uh,
Paul, Gary, and Rafe started that band, and
yeah, and then I know my buddy Mike D is just did a little run with them
yeah.
just now also. So I was
Mhm.
like, oh man, I was like, we actually we share some other connections aside from my fiance. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I was like, I never put two and two together. But Black Anvil I've always loved and was kind of into and respected. And really cool. Then you have Contracult Collective, which is something else that I dove into after we met. I was like, oh, let me check out the music. I'm just all about. So when I meet good people, I want to check out their music and support it. And it's got a really cool vibe to it. I love music that doesn't shove itself into one genre.
Thank you.
You
Yeah, I
you
agree.
hear like some metal in there, you've got melodies, but you've got this aggression and this other part of it. There's the little electronics, the little this, the little that, and I'm like, okay, cool. When music doesn't have a box to shove it in is when I really find it most hitting. But now you've is it COVID that's really had you pushed a little bit more into doing scoring and things like that, or is this something that you naturally shifted towards? Like where did that little bit of a transition happen?
Well, I actually got the opportunity to score my first film back in 2016. I
That
want
Story of a Girl?
Story of a
Or
Girl. Yeah,
yeah, cool.
exactly. So, that was kind of my introduction to it. My mom directed that movie, and she had talked to me about maybe trying to bring me on as a music supervisor. And
Mhm.
then as I started thinking about it and and I like read the script, I had a really good friend named Dean Baltalonis. Shout out to him, incredible producer and engineer. Used to own a studio called Atomic, and then eventually went to own a studio called Wild Arctic. He's worked on records for American Nightmare, Madball, No Warning, like tons of hardcore bands. And he like scored a film, and I was just really inspired by, I always loved like film composition, but for some reason I just didn't think I was in that world. And I was like, well, wait, I think I could do this. I grew up around the music industry, or sorry, excuse me, the movie industry my whole life. And, you know, I appreciate film music a lot. And yeah, she took a chance on me, and I did it. And, you know, I made it my own. Was definitely like challenging, way outside of like most, you know, kind of sphere of aggressive music or anything. But I was really happy with it. And then, you know, that just got me wanting to do more of it. And so, you know, I definitely kind of not fell off of it, but sort of put it to the side when I was working heavily on Contracult stuff. We got a offer for a development deal through Roadrunner. So that just became my life's goal, was like, I'm going to make this band work, and I'm going to make this band big. And like, you know, this is cliche, but Trent Reznor, you know, is still probably my biggest, I don't like to use this term, inspiration. I'm going to say inspiration. I don't like to use the title.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, I want his life, in the sense that like, I think he has this really amazing balance that he can work on. You know, he works on Nine Inch Nails and gets to tour with them, and then also has this other side of his career. And I really wanted that, but I just wasn't, you know, the Contracult stuff was just taking up so much of my time. So my idea was, all right, I'm going to make this what it is. And then I'm going to, you know, also pursue my scoring career. And yeah, that didn't go exactly as I had anticipated, as a lot of things do. And we kind of like just got started with Roadrunner and with releasing stuff and playing a show in February of 2020. And then, you know, we all know what happened after that. So yeah, it definitely was an opportunity to kind of start, you know, pushing myself a little bit more into that. I mean, I had some other things going on. I actually scored, like I did do the score of this score I just released for Romance Isn't Dead, which is actually it's actually like, it's a porno. It's from a super cool alternative queer porn website called Aorta Films. And I did another score for them called Breathless as well, which is hopefully going to be released soon. So yeah, that happened before pandemic. And then during pandemic, I mean, you know, I was still working on Contracult stuff, but I really wanted, I did have that conscious decision of like, okay, I really need to take this more seriously. Also, partially because I was bummed at myself for not trying to pursue more of it, because I felt like I would, you know, I would just have more to do during that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was like, well, shit, like I spent all this time and energy trying to make this band thing happen. And now nobody can really make a band thing happen the same way. And, you know, I got to find something else to do. And it definitely put a lot of things into perspective. So I guess for that reason, I made a choice to take it equally as seriously as what I had going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a little bit easier when it's something that you're kind of like writing and recording on your own and the world is shut down, that you can kind of like really hone in on it, as opposed to being in a practice space with band members writing songs or in a van touring. When you went to school for engineering and recording, was it anything in the back of your mind that was on your radar, or was that, you know, so you're in that middle point, you know, like you went to school for engineering, you have that background in growing up in film and movies, but you had the desire to also write. When you went to school, was it I want to record and produce bands? Is it I want to record and produce my own stuff? Like, or where was that at? Because it being the creative musician, and um, I know that's this weird thing where sometimes you're sit in the middle of a crossroad.
Right.
Like when you went to school for that, what was the main focus? Like, where did you see yourself going?
Excuse me. um I wanted to work on bands and artists, honestly. I didn't see film composition at all. I mean, the only my uncle Michael Bacon, he was kind of the only person like close to me that did film composition as a career, and he's just so much more musical. Well, let me think. Let me explain this. He's so much more musical in terms of theory than I am, and like, he can actually notate stuff and
Like write it down.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, like I can't read a lick of music. Like I'll write you a song, but don't ask me to read a lick of music.
Exactly. To tell you the truth, I think this was like, I think during that time it was kind of before. I mean, obviously it's not there were a lot of composers I was aware of, like John Carpenter and
Yeah.
you know uh um yeah, a few other like more synth based artists that were doing film compositions, but I feel like it hadn't really taken the revolution that it has in like the last few years. So I just didn't really think about it. And at the time I just wanted to record punk and hardcore and metal bands. That was my main focus. Like I loved like Kripalu, I loved Dean Bartolones, and like I wanted that, you know. I think Kurt more so because I wanted to have a really active touring band as well. But that was so much more my goal than like anything else, than even like writing for, I don't know, or writing with other artists or anything along the lines of anything other than, recording a good band and getting a great sound and getting a great guitar sound. Like that was so much more my focus at the time.
Yeah, that was great too. Like to your point, when you went to school, you got to kind of cross a little piece of that off your bucket list, probably when recording Burn, right? I mean, I was like, oh, I mean, New York hardcore legends,
Yeah, definitely. That was a fun one.
Yeah, I was when I saw that you recorded it, because I remember when that came out, because it popped up on my radar, being a hardcore kid first, before meeting my goth queen. As I joke around with her all the time. She's like, I'm turning you goth. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm just a guy that loves music. So you put good shit in front of me, I'm gonna eat it up. So that must have been a lot of fun to work with them. And then also the recent thing you've worked on with Miss Trez. That was a killer track.
Thank you.
Took a listen to that, and it's funny you said, with Trent Reznor being someone that's very, inspiring to you as you're doing things. That was a kind of a interesting step for you as a producer, I'm sure, where now you have this female vocal that is a little different from the heavier stuff, but it has a heavy undertone to it. And Trent Reznor being someone that not only scores films, but co-writes with other people. I love how he expands himself outside of just what he is. I mean, I was just knew up. I don't know if you know or have met him or know of him, but Pete Mills. Yeah, he was. He's on the previous episode of the podcast with his band The Sweet Kill, and him also being someone that's a producer and a writer. We ended up on that Trent Reznor talk as well, because he covered Hurt, where he kind of blended that song with Fascination Street by The Cure. And him being someone that's also producing other artists and stuff, that must have been a fun one for you. It was a little bit of a step out of the norm, And it really it felt good, that song, you know, the production you did on that record. She sounds great. It still has this kind of dark, beautiful undertone, and the aggression where it needs to be. So was that a fun project to work on?
Really fun. I love working with Miss Trez. Tiffany is her name. Um, yeah, you know, I she was one of the first artists that I worked with in LA actually, because I think like I still really wanted to produce and, you know, work with other artists, but I think I made this I when I lived in New York, you know, like I kind of pigeonholed myself a little bit as far as the bands I wanted to work on, because I wanted to do punk and hardcore and metal so bad that, you know, I really went for it with that. And I've done, you know, tons of records for bands that kind of fell under that sphere. And yeah, and then it kind of just I think as my musical taste expanded and I started getting like a little bit more into the darker stuff, and, you know, especially like the music I played was more in line with that with Contracult, I really wanted to shift my production credits to be more like that. But, you know, it's one of those things where you stay in a place for a long time and you just kind of get known for that. And, you know, I just getting a little tired of it. Like, I wasn't able to work with a lot of the same bands because I would raise my rates a little bit. And, you know, I just think, generally speaking, I think New York is a little bit more of a hobbyist place when it comes to playing in a band. Obviously, it's really expensive and there's just not a whole lot of music industry unless you do rap or pop or something.
Mhm.
Something along that lines. So yeah, I was really adamant about trying to find cool artists that wanted to do stuff like this. And I met her through my girlfriend, and that was the first track we worked on together. We did another one called Warzone that's cool. And then she's got one coming out eventually with me called Ugly that I'm really stoked on too. And it's fun with her because she's super open to her sound, and, you know, she gets specific about things that she needs and she wants and ways to be, but like she's very cool. It's really easy to work with her because she takes my suggestions really seriously, and she's not like, you know, she doesn't come to me like, I need a song that sounds like Chelsea Wolfe, or I need a song that sounds like, um, I don't know, like,
Yeah, or even like how Trent worked with Halsey. Like
yeah,
I was like, you know, that was definitely one of the surprise records of last year for me. I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, am I reading this right? You know, like
yeah,
very cool marriage of two, you know, this kind of pop person and this, you know, and then Trent being that, and that clicked together. Was like, whoa. I was like, this is awesome.
yeah,
uh, you know, that definitely just missed making my probably top 5 records for last year. That was a good one. I actually bought that record on vinyl for Melissa for Christmas.
oh
uh,
cool.
yeah,
He's
as
really
we
good at, like,
build our vinyl collection.
yeah, he's really good at just like putting his mark on things, you know.
Yeah, with that, it's like he doesn't take it over,
Totally.
and but he knows what it needs of what he's good at
Yeah.
to give it something
Mhm.
without it like completely taking it over. Because it that for someone like him, it could be easy to take that over, you know. Um, and what was I was just listening to the other day. Uh, Spotify randomly gave me this like, hey, you know, here's a playlist of like songs of 1997,
Mhm.
and you know that's the year A Perfect Drug came out. And it's funny. I was like, oh my god, I was like, I forgot, you know, like kind of when that song came out, how just like how hitting and impactful it was. And then it was even bigger when I realized like how many years ago that was. I was like, god damn. I was like,
Yeah,
it's still so relevant, you know.
totally.
Now when you're doing these scores, now I know it's a little different probably on every project.
Mhm.
Are there some that you got to see parts of the film first, or was it just reading scripts? Um, you know, how did that work? How does that work?
Well, obviously for the adult content, there's not much of a script. So
Right. Yeah.
see that. It's interesting. A lot of times, so what I've gotten pretty uh what I've gotten pretty into recently, which I learned from my friend Scott Hendricks, previously from a band called Skeleton Witch. We just worked on he's a composer as well, and we just worked on a film together. I can't give a name or talk too much about it,
Okay.
but he he had he had this idea. He gave the suggestion. He's like, I work with this other composer. I think we should write something which he calls like a suite. So it's sort of like a 5-minute block of music that basically is like a few cues, one into the other, of like what we're kind of anticipating will be the theme for this, for what we imagined in our heads. And it was just based off of a script. And I tell you, every piece of music that we did in that actually, became like longer cues between, between 1 to 3 minute cues, ended up in the movie. So, sometimes you just nail it. Sometimes I like it. It really helps to have the visual component. It's much better to have like locked picture and everything like that. But, I do pretty well just reading a script sometimes. And that's what's kind of, and that's what can be kind of fun about it. I mean, and then I've done the same thing, and none of the music gets moved. We end up like none of the music in the film, and then I see the picture, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't work with what I anticipated. So I guess it's different every time. And then sometimes you're in a situation where you have a stubborn director that falls in love with a temp score, and you just have to match that, which is not my favorite, but it happens.
Yeah. It's something that I've always kind of, to me, on my list of dream jobs, I've always thought about like, writing songs for backgrounds of parts of movies, or even like putting together soundtracks, or like what songs would go with movie. Because I do have that, I've always had a thing for that visual element of music.
Yeah.
It's always been something that I've been drawn to.
Yeah.
I think the closest thing I've had to it thus far is a song I wrote for a friend of mine, Neil Rubenstein, who's like a stand-up comedian / musician. I don't know if you know Neil.
Yeah, I mean, not personally, but I know who he is.
Yeah. So I kind of I wrote a little song for him because he's been doing on his YouTube channel, where he's just kind of, as he's traveling, doing his stand-up and things through the country, just he needs like background music to just his videos, where he's just talking about the cities that he's in, what he eats there, So I was like, dude, I wrote this song for you. I recorded it real quick. I sent it off to him, and he threw it in one of his YouTube videos. And I was like, yeah. And like when I kind of saw it and heard it in the background, I was like, that's what I'm talking about. As I get older and I'm a dad, and you're busy, you got a mortgage, this, that, and the other thing. I don't desire the touring as much anymore, as I just desire I want to add something to something. I want to, I want to create, for the sake of creating, and I miss collaboration, because for the last decade, I've really mainly been just a lonely singer-songwriter. It's like me and an acoustic guitar, and I feel like I've just kind of hit the ceiling there, and I've been looking to work on new things. But that's something I've always loved. I mean, I say this all the time when I'm talking movies with people, and I think about like Forrest Gump. I'm like, if you took that badass motherfucking soundtrack away from that movie, the movie would have lost a lot. The music had such a part to tell, in that. It was like so good,
for sure.
And I think, being the Cure fan that I am, one of my favorite Cure songs ever is Burn, written for The Crow.
Yeah.
And there's something magical about the marrying of music and film that I really feel people aren't paying enough attention to these days. And I love movie soundtracks. I recently at my local record store picked up the soundtrack. There's a to oh my god, why am I having a massive brain fart right now? There's like a few soundtracks that have always stood out to me for years. Obviously, being a music nerd and a film buff, um, there's like films like High Fidelity, which is one of my favorite movies. Based on a guy that loves music. And then you've got, like I said, like Forrest Gump and things like that. But I bought oh my god, why am I having such a massive brain fart right now? And I made Melissa listen to the soundtrack because it like had like Tori Amos on it and Chris Cornell and like oh my god. All right, I'm totally shitting the bed on this one. We'll come back to it. but film and music have just had, and you think about it, you go back to the days of like silent films where there was no speaking and there was just background music.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like music really goes right along with it, like from the beginning. For me, as a music fan, I think I really fell in love with music when I was like 9, seeing an Elvis Presley movie, and was like, this dude's just getting up on a table singing to a bunch of people in a restaurant, and everybody in the world is paying attention to it. Like, there's something magical about that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So what was your first big introduction to music? Like, what got you playing music and what got you falling in love with music?
Okay. I think when I was like, I mean, there was always music in my house for sure. Like my
dad plays, right?
And
yeah,
my dad's a guitar player and has a band and writes. And I think when I was like, I think the first stuff that I really gravitated, I mean, there was music that I liked a lot before this. Like, I remember my dad taught me how to make a mixtape, and I had this mixtape
best ever.
Yeah, I had a mixtape that just had some of my favorite songs, and they were bizarre. It was like, Smashing Pumpkins, Bullet Butterfly Wings, into Ironic by Alanis Morissette, into I forget the name of the band, but they had this hit in the 90s that went, if you want, no, not that one. Look around your world, pretty baby, is it every roll to think? I don't know, they had a strange name. But stuff like that. But when I was 9 years old, I became overly fascinated with the film Saturday Night Fever, which oddly enough, and I got really into disco music through that film, and I just loved it. I loved the Bee Gees became my favorite band. I started dressing like John Travolta, and I got really obsessed with that. And then oddly enough, because of that obsession, I got really into like 70s culture, and started playing guitar because of Barry Gibb. And for some reason, I think, the other like 70s icons as a band that I thought of and like I had witnessed images of, and I was like, just had this association of like, okay, this is also the 70s, was Kiss, which is so interesting because it's like the idea of like those two worlds and my love and appreciation for both of them. It's like I'm basically having fist fights in my head if you think about like that era, like the whole disco sucks movement and everything like that. But when I think about it in terms of like what I love now, it kind of makes sense to me, especially with my own band, because we do have this like dance element to us, but we're also really heavy. So it's like that kind of first, like now I think about it, I'm like, of course that makes sense that my two favorite bands were the Bee Gees and Kiss, because like this is oddly enough how we got here, like, and how like industrial music got here, and goth, and and just like
100%.
pop in general. It's like there's so, the first drum loop was on Saturday Night Fever, and anybody who denies that is wrong. Sorry to say, but
Yeah.
it's like that's it's sorry, not Saturday Night Fever, Staying Alive. But yeah, like it's interesting. So actually, I'd say like that film was really like a big push musically for me, and that's
as much as like the punk movement like talked shit on disco as the 70s were ending,
sure.
you really wouldn't have it without the disco, you know. Because even like earlier punk beats and earlier like Clash stuff, there's a dancey element to that.
Big time.
It's not, it differs from maybe the New York City punk, but I mean, come on, the Ramones, if the Ramones don't make you bop your head, it's the first band ever really called a punk band, and make you want to dance, like you don't love music.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but it's funny as you talk about Kiss. Like growing up, for some reason I never got into Kiss, and my son's 11 now, and a couple of years ago he made me buy him a Kiss record. I was like, I can't believe I'm buying you a Kiss record, but I'm never gonna say no to him when it comes to music.
Sure.
So I'm like, if this is something that's sparking something in you, then cool, I'm gonna fucking get it for you. And we were like sitting eating dinner, and I started busting into, I was like, I was made for loving you. He's like, Dad, I thought you don't like Kiss. And I'm like, I don't love Kiss, but that fucking song is catchy. It's genre bending. I'm not denying that. I'd just be an idiot if I said that I wouldn't. It finally came to me, the soundtrack I was talking about, Great Expectations.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? Killer fucking soundtrack. I mean, like I said, Tori Amos, Chris Cornell, Scott Weiland, in some of his first solo stuff. And I got it for $1. And I remember listening to that soundtrack so much, when I was a teenager, and loving that movie because it was, it was a very different film for the time. And, movies have always been a big love for me. So I bought it and I put it on while I was like cooking dinner, and I made Melissa listen to it. I was like, no, this is one of my favorite Tori Amos songs. I was like, yeah, I'm a hardcore kid. I'm covered in tattoos, but yeah, I've seen Tori Amos live like 5 times. I'm not gonna,
player.
Yeah, she fucking rules. But yeah, the marriage between music and movies is so deep. Just like you were saying with, like Saturday Night Fever and things like that. I mean, you think about like the movie Grease, like
hey, also written by the Bee Gees.
Yeah. How do you feel about the Foo Fighters Bee Gees record?
I don't know it. Did they do they did a Bee Gees cover record?
They covered, yeah. You gotta
know it. I gotta find it. I mean,
it's so cool. I mean, wow. I love that. I love that someone like Dave Grohl, who is known for a band that like really, helped change music like Nirvana, going back and like paying homage to a band like the Bee Gees. I was like, that's so rad. Yeah. It's really good.
I mean, good songs are good songs, and that's just the end of it. Despite the genre, and also like the Bee Gees had a really, they have a very like before Fever and all their kind of like contribution to disco, like their early 60s stuff is very, very like Beatles and very rock and roll. So obviously Dave Grohl is is one of the great music historians of our time. So that makes sense to me, and I think that's really cool. I gotta find that. I wasn't even aware.
Yeah, they did God, it was probably 6-7 months ago or so, but it's super rad, and I even felt like it fell under the radar because I saw it at my record store during record store day, and I didn't know what it was yet.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that it was the Foo Fighters, and I passed up on grabbing the vinyl, and then found out about it like 3 weeks later, and I was like, "This is amazing." I'm like, I had that record in my hand, and I put it down. I'm like, I'm so bad at myself. Um, but yeah, very very cool. Um, again, somebody that's just keeping it going. I mean, I kind of joke around about it all the time, and I'm like, like when there's that whole phrase like rock and roll is dead and things like that, and I'm like, well, I don't know. Dave Grohl's still holding on to that. He's got that thing where, I mean, now they've made a movie.
Yeah, I saw.
Again, as we're marrying music and movies,
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about going to see it tonight because I'm
Oh,
like, it's definitely it dabbles in the kind of cheesy horror movie genre, which I love. Like the whole aspect that they're going to record their record and it's haunted, and I'm like, dude, that's right on my alley. You're marrying music, horror, movies. I'm like, talk dirty to me.
it's fun. I enjoyed it. It's funny too. Like, I think a lot of people, and I sort of had the same reaction at first. I'm like, wait, why are the Foo Fighters making a movie? And then, I kind of started thinking about their career and like and their music videos and stuff like that. And like, actually, this makes sense. They've
Yeah,
always
their videos were cinematic from right out of the gate.
and they acted in them and they were funny and they had it was just a big piece of the band. I enjoyed it. I thought they did a good job. The score is excellent too. It's Roy McMorda,
Mhm.
drummer of Nausea and
Oh, really?
yeah, Nausea, Soulfly. He did some what's that band with Corey Taylor, Stone Sour. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and he did. I never really listened too much to his solo stuff, but he's a total synth wizard, especially with modular stuff. And I have watched videos of him explaining it and like showing his giant like Buchla machine and everything. But I thought he did a great job. It's really good. I don't know if I have to look up his IMDb if he's done much more stuff, but I really I was impressed.
Nice.
It's worth a watch. The cameos are funny. The gore and the violence is really good. It's
Yeah, I'm all about good. Just give me good kill scenes.
totally
As everybody's been like living on both sides of the fence on the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre that's on Netflix, and I enjoyed it just because I thought the kills were good. I thought the cinematography was good, and I was like,
good. The
I
kill
mean, you're
point,
not. Yeah, the kills were great. I'm like, you're not coming to this for like Oscar worthy performance.
I thought it was pretty good, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I liked it. I thought it smoked the new Halloween personally. Like I went into it with low expectations and was like,
yeah, same.
I thought that was good. I fucked
I
with it.
I I thought I thought Halloween Kills definitely let me down. The
Yeah.
one before it I thought was really good,
I
but
thought so too.
and then they had that trajectory, and it was just I was like, I'm like,
Yeah.
how did you fall off so hard on a good trajectory? It just wasn't there. Were there good kill scenes? Yeah, but so much of the movie I think just missed the mark.
Yeah.
You
Evil dies
know,
tonight. Evil dies tonight. Like by the ninth time they said that, I was like, I'm done.
yeah, them all rallied in the hospital, like, yeah, we're gonna go get him. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
it just reminded me of like, I was like, oh, so are you trying to pay homage to like, let's go get Frankenstein's monster, yeah,
Yeah.
but on
Exactly.
a really cheesy level.
Exactly. And then they kill that special needs guy that literally has like no
Right.
no like doesn't no resemblance to Michael Myers whatsoever.
Not even.
Complete
Yeah.
different body type, like doesn't walk. It's just it was just I understand the point of it and everything, but yeah, it didn't really do it for me. I mean, that's Halloween, so speaking of movies that where scores come into play so much, like that's definitely a huge inspiration on like any of my film composition. I think John Carpenter is incredible.
Unbelievable.
And Halloween, still to this day might be my favorite horror movie of all time. So I'll go see and appreciate any of them, no matter what they are. But it was a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, yeah, John Carpenter, and I find that so interesting that he can make great films and then score the great film. And part of me in my mind, I'm always like, is it because he's a great filmmaker or is it because he's a great composer? You know, like, because when he's shooting these things, is he hearing what's behind it and then going for the emotion and vice versa? Like, I would love to pick that man's brain on that.
Same.
You know, because he hits both sides of it, you know, brilliantly. That's hard to do. I mean,
he's got a good cameo in Studio 666 as well.
Nice.
Fun to see him. And I think he actually wrote the theme too, which is cool.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, that just says something. If Dave Grohl is like releasing like writing aspects of music to somebody else, it's got to be somebody that you know he feels can really kill it.
Yeah,
for sure. So do you have some new projects that you're working on? Any new music from Contracult? Like, what do you have going on kind of right now that you can talk about?
I have another score coming out for another adult film that I worked on with another great filmmaker named Max Disgrace. The film is called Ruptured, and it's super. The film itself is really cool. It's I guess it's a, you know, horror porn, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
And I really loved working on this score. It's probably one of my favorites. So I'm releasing that April 15th through my personal Spotify page, which is SVART Sounds. So SVART Sounds. And then I have another one I'm going to do after that called Breathless. I did just finish a film that I'm really excited about. There's no release date for that, with my friend Scott. And then we have another, Contracult has another record in the can. We released two singles from it relatively recently. One's called Plunge and the other one is called Meek. And we're hoping to get our full length out by the fall. We're still debating if we're going to work with a certain label, or release it ourselves. So we're kind of waiting on that. And yeah, and then a couple more films booked for the year that are still still a little too fresh to give names on or director.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that.
But no, it's great. It's great that you have stuff kind of like, you know, queued up to work on. Keep that creative juice flowing. And again, it's an art that in all reality is still in the infant stage for you. So it's pretty awesome to kind of see like where that can go is pretty rad. Again, I've always, you're marrying two things that make perfect sense, and you have that background in both, which is giving you that little bit of a push per se. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited, with even for the Contracult new stuff. Hoping to see you drop that record. I'm hoping you make it to New York for a show.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. Growing up, as you know, well, I mean, you were born in California, right?
I was, but
mainly grew up here.
It was when my folks were on location, so I definitely consider myself more of a New Yorker.
Yeah. I'm a New Yorker. That
Papa had an argument with me about that, but
oh, really? That's funny.
Some purists feel differently, but that's how I feel, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe I born and raised in New York, but every time I step foot in California, I'm like, this is where I want to be. You know, I'm, you know, Melissa and I our future is definitely California.
Awesome.
You know, eventually it's just so much more of, I think, kind of just where I was at. I mean, at 17 on my first like real tour that I was ever on, when we got to California, it was very eye opening for me and very. I lived there when I was a very little. My sister was born there, actually, my younger sister, but I was like a year old.
Right.
My mom said I was like belly flopping on a skateboard before I could walk. And all I wanted to do was like go out on like Sunday afternoons when all the low riders would come out, and you know. You know, I'm looking forward to, you know, and definitely this summer, Melissa and I are talking about definitely an LA trip. It's due. We're both due for one. It's been a while, so we'll have to hook up and
yeah
hang and get some dinner. But like I said, you know, my last episode, you know, Pete Mills of the Sweet Kill, you know, another great producer, songwriter. If you haven't heard that record yet, Darkness, definitely check that one out. I think you'll dig it for sure. And you know, that's where I keep getting stuck. I'm like, you know, like right now these days, so much of the bands I'm listening to and just the feel that I'm looking for is all in California. And I'm like, New York, I love you, but you're killing me.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, well, the traffic is just as bad in California. And I'm like, it's not just the traffic. It's
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, it's
you learn to live with it. It's the same. It's like complaining that the subways are crowded. You just figure it out.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So you what else do you have now? Your studio for you as far as recording. Where can people kind of locate that for you?
That's in my apartment out here in LA. It's, you know, I can't really do a full-fledged metal band in here, but
yeah, hard to put those rack toms in an apartment, probably.
Yeah. You can visit my website though, SVART Sounds, so SVART Sounds.com. And yeah, if you're looking to do something, shoot me an email. You know, I'm like just a little more choosy about the production side of what I do, but I definitely like to meet new artists and look for new artists, especially people that, you know, really want to think outside the box and aren't prone to you know, I want my band to sound like this other band or something.
Yeah.
Anything that's kind of outside of that, I'm definitely still really interested in doing. And occasionally I'll take like mixing and mastering jobs on the side if something comes along.
Yeah, something you like and you're like, all right, I got a little block of time I'm open with, you know. Exactly. Yeah. Now, when you're out like seeing music, so let's say you go to a show, there's a great opening band, like has there been like musicians or bands that you've kind of sought out and are like, hey, I love your sound, I'd love to work with you? Is that something that you're also seeking from your end?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you know, just like innovative artists and people and you know, something a little different is always a good one. I haven't really made that connection too strongly yet, like from seeing a band out here, but definitely a couple of people that I've like put some feelers out for. Yeah, I think the most recent one, which I got connected to through a friend of mine, and it wasn't really like seeing them live, but it's this artist named Enrique Javier Jesus.
Okay.
And
I think you said Enriquez because we were talking about Chris.
Yeah, different guy. But
yeah,
I mean, like he his roommate came to me and basically said, you know, my roommate makes music and he wants to do, he feels what he really wants in his life is like, he's worked with these pop producers and they're just not really bringing this edge on him. But like his biggest influences are Sade, Madonna, Marilyn Manson, and Nine Inch Nails. It was like,
Wow.
I'm sold. Yes.
You're like,
Yes.
let me hear this.
And yeah, because we can make all that happen in one project, and it can be really fucking good. You know, when I hear something more like that, I'm excited. When I hear something like I want to sound like Boy Harsher, it's just not, you know, it just doesn't really get me going. No disrespect to Boy Harsher, by the way.
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's more just like it's like this carbon copy kind of band worship thing. I mean, I've just never really understood it or been into that so much, you know? Like I've always kind of thought like even like my first discovery of something like D-Beat. I'm like, wait, so there's just tons of bands that want to sound exactly like Discharge and write the logo the same way and put Dis in front of their band. Like, I don't get it. Let's just not for me.
No, you can tell, you know, when you're trying to sound like something, it's very hard to be sincere. Mm-hmm. So when all that is kind of removed from it, you know, it loses its flavor, you know.
I agree.
And that's where things go awry. I mean, you know, for as much as I'm always looking to discover new music, I 100% skip past 90 bands before I find one, you know, because there are those carbon copies. There are those. I've even left bands that I've been in because the conversations started to go more towards, I want to sound like, and I'm like, no. Yeah. You know, like whatever. I don't give a shit. I'll say it. Yeah. I started Taking Back Sunday. Did we sound like Taking Back Sunday does when I was in the band? No. But when the conversations were, let's wear skinny ties and we want to sound more like Saves the Day, I was mentally checked out. I don't play music to sound like anybody else.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I play music to tell a story and to share something musically. You know, so it's like, listen, you know, I'm not trying to shit on those guys, but at the same time, you know, as a 20-something-year-old, I want my mark to be my mark. I don't want it to be someone's carbon copy.
For sure.
You know,
and you know, I definitely think they came out of that, and now they sound like Taking Back Sunday. But
right, yeah. You know, I mean, my buddy Fred, you know, Marciano, who was in the band after John left. I mean, you know, that guy, I don't think he's written a song that I haven't liked throughout all his years, whether it was his band Brody or Breaking Pangea, The Color Fred. I mean, that guy, you know, and you know, it's funny because I know even John and I grew up together, John Nolan, and you know, I know where his roots of music writing are at, and you know, you kind of feel it sometimes now, and I'm like, you know, good for them. You know, I'm not trying to knock them necessarily, but it wasn't the road I wanted to go down at that time. You know, I was like a little more heavier and melodic as opposed to poppy and melodic.
Right.
But you know, to each his own, and you know, I'm a different person. They're a different band, so like kudos to them. You know.
Right.
But I really appreciate you hanging out with me on a Saturday afternoon, talking shit about music and movies. Definitely fun. Look forward to all the stuff ahead. You know, let us know when you're coming to New York, and I will 100% let you know when we're coming to Cali.
Will do. Sounds good. Great.
All right, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And again, thanks for being on the Nobody Speaks podcast, where I started this podcast because I wanted to stop fighting with people and talk to people about things that I love, like music and movies and just life, and not argue about politics. So this was a fun time.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem. Take care. Be good.
You too.